The long ship groans beneath your feet. You're 17 years old. You've never left Norway. You've never seen anything taller than the pine trees that line the fjord behind your father's farm. And now you're standing at the prow of a 30-oar vessel, 3 days into the North Sea, watching the horizon tilt and swell with a stomach that has not yet forgiven you for being here. Your uncle Ragnar stands beside you. He's made this crossing 9 times. He smells like salt and wood smoke and old violence. He points south and says nothing. He doesn't have to. That darkness at the edge of the world is the coast of England. You are going to go take things from people who have more things than you. This is called a raid. You will call it something else in your old age, if you live that long. The village you hit is called Lindisfarne. It sits on a small island off the Northumbrian coast. There is a monastery there. The monks are very surprised to see you. You are very surprised by how little they fight back. Your share of the plunder comes to 2 silver crosses, a gilded manuscript cover, 14 yards of fine wool cloth, and 6 copper candlesticks. Back home, that's worth more than your father earns in a year farming rye. You sail back north with the summer winds behind you and a very specific feeling in your chest. It is not exactly pride. It is not exactly shame. It is the feeling of a man who has discovered that the world has no locked doors, only doors that haven't been tested yet. By your 20s, you have a reputation. Not a great one, not yet, but men know your name on 2 coasts, which is more than most men can say. You've raided in England 4 times. You've traded in Burka and Hedeby, sold furs and amber, and things you don't ask too many questions about. You've wintered in Dublin, which the Norsemen have been building into something like a proper town. You've been in 3 fights that mattered and 7 that didn't. You have a scar along your left forearm from a Frankish spearman who nearly killed you in a river ambush. You remember him more clearly than most of the men you've killed. You come home to Norway with enough silver to buy land. You buy a farm in a valley 2 days' ride from the coast. You build a hall. You find a wife. Her name is Astrid. Her father is a farmer with 4 sons and not enough land to divide sensibly. She is practical, sharp-tongued, and completely unimpressed by your reputation, which you find oddly attractive. The farm is harder than raiding. Nobody tells you this. The soil is thin. The growing season is short. You plant barley and rye and watch the weather like it owes you something. A late frost in your 2nd year destroys half your crop. You borrow grain from a neighbor and spend the winter eating less than you're used to. You have 2 children by the time you're 26. A boy, Eric, a girl, Sigrid. They are expensive in ways you did not anticipate. The thing about being a farmer raider is that the 2 lives don't fully trust each other. Your neighbors respect the silver you've brought back. They don't entirely respect you. In the old order of things, a man is what his land makes him. A man with a fine hall and thin soil and a reputation built on other people's churches is a man whose social standing is complicated. Your wife's eldest brother, Gunnar, has never left the valley. He farms well, speaks at the thing with confidence, knows every family's bloodlines for 6 generations. When there's a dispute over boundary stones or grazing rights, men go to Gunnar. Nobody asks you. You are useful in the way a sword is useful. You are not consulted in the way a wise man is consulted. This bothers you more than you expected. The jarl's summons comes in your 28th year. His name is Hakon. He controls the coastline from the Sognefjord south, which means he controls whether men like you sail at all. You've paid him his share of your plunder since the beginning. It is the arrangement. Everyone understands the arrangement. He wants you to lead a fleet of 12 ships east, into the Baltic, to raid the Slavic settlements along the river mouths and establish a trading route. This is what he calls it, a trading route. You will establish it by arriving with 300 armed men and seeing what develops. You go. Of course you go. You have debts and ambition and a hall that needs a better roof. The eastern rivers are different from anything you know, wide and slow and brown. The land is flat in every direction, which unnerves men raised among mountains. The Slavic villages fight back harder than the English monks, and the mosquitoes are worse than the fighting. You come back 18 months later with enough silver to fix the roof and buy 2 more fields, and with 11 of your 12 ships. The 12th is at the bottom of a river called the Dnieper, with 14 men inside it. You knew all 14 of them by name. Hakon calls the expedition a success. You don't argue with him. You know better. You're 33 when you make the decision that changes everything. The decision is this: to stop raiding and start trading properly. This is not as dramatic as it sounds. The Norse have always done both. The same ship that carries warriors west carries merchants east. The same man who takes a monastery's silver in June sells walrus, ivory, and hedeby in September. The categories are not as distinct as the monks would like them to be, but you are tired of the violence. Not morally tired exactly, practically tired. Raiding is a young man's enterprise. The returns diminish as the targets fortify and the defenders organize. The English are building burhs now, fortified towns that are genuinely difficult to take without a sustained campaign and the kind of logistical support that requires a king's backing, not a farmer's savings. So you pivot. You buy a stake in a hedeby merchant's operation. You learn the trade routes: furs north to south, silver east to west, silk and spices from the Byzantine traders for anything they'll take in return. You spend 3 years moving goods instead of taking them, and at the end of 3 years, you are wealthier than you were at the end of any raiding season, and nobody is trying to kill you during the transaction. Your wife says this is an improvement. You suspect she is right. By 40, you are a man of some standing. Not a jarl, not a great chieftain, but a man whose opinion is sought, whose credit is good in 4 ports, whose children will inherit something worth inheriting. Eric is 15 and already taller than you. He has your build and his mother's intelligence, which is the better combination. Sigrid is 13 and shows no interest in the domestic work her mother assigns her, and complete interest in the longship you keep moored at the coast. You are not sure what to do with this. The thing is where real power lives, for men like you. The assembly of free men, held in the open air, where disputes are settled and laws recited from memory, and the collective judgment of the community carries more authority than any single man's sword arm. You speak at the thing now. Men listen. This took a long time to earn, and you understand its value. You have converted, nominally, to Christianity. This is a business decision as much as a spiritual one. The Frankish and English merchants are more comfortable dealing with a man who at least gestures toward their god. You still make offerings to Odin before a sea voyage, quietly, out of habit, in something that isn't quite faith, but isn't quite not faith either. You suspect most gods are more pragmatic about these arrangements than their priests claim. The winter of your 44th year is the hardest one in memory. The cold comes early and stays late. The fjord freezes completely for the first time in a generation. Livestock die. Old people die. A sickness moves through the valley and takes your neighbor's 2 youngest children and very nearly takes Sigrid. You sit by her bed for a week and make promises to every god you know. She recovers. The promises are probably not causal, but you keep them anyway. The famine that follows the cold kills more people than the cold itself did. It is always that way. The shortage is not just food, it's the downstream cascade. No seed grain for spring, no healthy animals to pull the plows, no surplus to fall back on, because there was never much surplus to begin with. You open your stores and share what you have. This costs you. It also makes you the kind of man the valley remembers when things get better. Things do get better. They always do, eventually. This is the grinding truth of subsistence. The catastrophe passes, the work resumes, and the only question is how many people are left to do it. Eric goes east in his 19th year. He takes passage on a Rus merchant vessel heading toward Constantinople. He says he wants to see the world. He says he'll be back in 2 seasons. He sends word twice in the first year, then nothing for 3 years. Then a letter, brought by a Byzantine trader, written in a hand you barely recognize. He is in Constantinople. He serves in the Varangian Guard, the Norse mercenaries who protect the emperor. He is paid in gold. He is not coming home yet. You show the letter to Astrid. She reads it twice. She says nothing for a long time. Then she says, "He is alive." That's enough for now. You understand. You were his age once, standing at the prow of a ship, watching a dark coast rise from the sea. You understand exactly what has him. You just wish, from this side of the years, that you could tell him what it costs. You are 51 when Astrid dies. It is not dramatic. A sickness in her chest that builds slowly over one winter and doesn't release her by spring. She knows what it is before the healers do. She arranges everything with the calm efficiency that characterized her entire life. The household, the accounts, what goes to Sigrid, what goes to Eric if he ever returns. On her last clear night, she tells you that you were a better husband than she expected when she married you, which she acknowledges is a low bar given that she expected very little. You laugh. It's the most honest compliment you've ever received. After she is gone, the hall is very quiet. You discover that you have spent 30 years making decisions in dialogue with someone who is no longer there to push back. The silence where her opinions used to be is the loudest thing you have ever heard. Eric comes home the following year. He is 32 years old. He has a Byzantine wife, a small fortune in gold solidi, and a way of moving through space that speaks of violence kept carefully under control. He looks at you across the hall, and you can see yourself at his age in the set of his jaw, and you can see his grandfather, your father, in the breadth of his shoulders. He stays. He learns the farm. He learns the trade routes. He takes over the negotiations you find exhausting because he speaks 4 languages to your 2 and has a diplomat's patience that you never developed. The valley decides it approves of him. This takes 2 years and several well-placed gestures of generosity, which is how the valley always makes up its mind. Sigrid, meanwhile, has been running a trading operation out of the coastal settlement for the better part of a decade. 2 ships, 7 regular trading partners, a reputation for reliability that is worth more, in commercial terms, than any single cargo. She did this without asking your permission, which you note you never actually withheld. You did well by your children. You are not always sure you deserve credit for this. You are 59 when Eric sits you down and explains, carefully, that you no longer need to manage the Eastern trade yourself. He says it respectfully. He means it kindly. You both understand that what he is actually saying is, you are old enough to stop. You stop. You spend your last years doing something you never expected to value, sitting still, watching the fjord, speaking at the thing when you have something worth saying, which is less often than you once thought. Telling stories to Eric's children, who are interested in the raids in the way that children are interested in history, as something exciting that happened safely in the past to people who are not them. One of them asked you once if you ever felt bad about what you took from those monasteries all those years ago. You think about this for longer than the child expects. You think about the gilded manuscript cover. You think about the monks' faces. You think about Lindisfarne and everything that came after it, and everything it cost to build a life from the beginning of that violence to the end. You tell the child, the world was arranged differently then. I was arranged differently then. You tell the child, the things you do when you are young to survive become the things you have to carry when you are old. You tell the child, choose carefully what you are willing to carry. The child nods and asks when dinner is. You die in your 63rd year. This is old for your time, for your life. Old enough to be unremarkable about it. There is no great battle, no dramatic last voyage. You fall asleep one evening by the fire with your grandchildren playing around your feet, and somewhere between one breath and the next, you simply stop. They put you in a ship burial, as is proper for a man of your standing. A small ship, you were never important enough for a large one, filled with the things they think you'll need. Your sword, your trade weights, some silver, a few objects that mean nothing to anyone else, and everything to whoever placed them there. The ship burns at dusk. The fjord reflects the fire. The smoke rises straight up into a sky that doesn't care about any of it. Somewhere your grandchildren are already growing up in a world that will forget the raids, but remember the trade routes. They will be merchants and farmers and jarls, and one day, crusaders and settlers and kings in lands that don't exist yet on any map you ever saw. They will build cathedrals on some of the same ground where your Uncle Ragnar burned things down. The world turns. It always does.